What are the top 5 skills for Sung Jinwoo in solo leveling a Rise? There are many good options, and I found what I think are the 5 best by looking at 3 things like how many good runes every skill has, are they the best at fulfilling their role, and can they be used across lots of content. So let's start off with number 5, Dagger Rush. So Dagger Rush is the 5th best skill in my opinion because it works as an amazing skill that deals a lot of break damage, making it function as one of the best skills for that said purpose, and it can be used across a pretty wide variety of content like Battlefield of Time and Guild Boss, through 2 of its runes, with the first one being Cold Ice. This is the water element version that can deal almighty break damage across the duration of the skill, so it takes a little bit of time for it to use all of its break damage, but it does come with its own merits, because whilst the skill is actually active, you can still go on to use other attacks and skills with your Sung Jinwoo, allowing you to do multiple things at once, meaning that this skill will work very well with other DPS options, because when you are within a 5-meter range, you can apply a debuff that increases the enemy's damage taken by 12%, giving you a pretty damn good increase to damage. But as well, this works great with hunters in Guild Boss who can also benefit from this damage increase, making it a very good support option. The next important rune for Dagger Rush then is going to be Dispersion, and this can also deal almighty break damage, making it one of the best choices for you to go for, because this skill can also work as sort of like a hybrid of a break and a DPS rune, due to its secondary effect allowing it to increase its own skill damage by 280% whenever you are attacking an enemy without a break gauge, making it work very well for clearing out waves of enemies in stuff like Battlefield of Time and just regular bosses you face in instance dungeons. This next skill is one that really does excel in game modes like Power of Destruction, Battlefield of Time and Story Mode, because in 4th we have Vertical Arts. So this skill has 3 really good runes, with the very best one being Crosshairs in my opinion, and it is the Fire Elements version, and it is great at many things such as defeating huge groups of enemies across a wide range thanks to its travel time, and as well is one of the best and easiest ways for you to consistently break the boss's arms in Power of Destruction, allowing you to keep it in the break state for the majority of the fights. Then for the other 2 good runes you have Sequent Explosions, and as well you have Gale, but let's talk about the water rune first, being Sequent Explosions, and this skill is very good in game modes like Battlefield of Time because it's very high amounts of burst damage, because it does have a pretty quick animation, but more importantly this skill's damage can increase by a massive 300% to any target that is currently in the break state, making it fantastic for that game mode, but it still can be used as one of your very best water DPS skills for your Jinwoo. And as for Gale, this has some very similar properties to Crosshairs and what it's actually good for, because this can pull in a lot of enemies whilst increasing damage dealt to normal monsters by up to 225%, so just like Crosshairs, it is a decently used rune for scenarios where you need to wipe out huge groups of enemies, making it in my opinion the 4th best skill in the game because it has lots of options which are great in many different game modes whilst doing its job better than other skills. Unlike Vertical Arts, the 3rd best skill in my opinion, Dagger Toss, only really has 2 runes which are commonly used, and they are Detonation and Electric Shock. However, the reason for this skill being higher is simply because it is in my opinion the 2nd best DPS skill in the game, and you might ask why do I think this? Well, when we take a look at Detonation, the fire rune, it does say it will do a set amount of damage per dagger that it throws. So looking then at how many daggers are actually thrown, you can see that Jinwoo throws 9 different daggers at the enemy, so whatever damage percent your Detonation rune is currently at, you can just multiply it by 9 times, and that's basically how much damage you'll be doing with it. But funnily enough, that isn't even the end of it, because this rune also has the ability to apply the burn damage over time effect, and on its highest rarity this can deal 175% of Jinwoo's attacker's damage, stacking up to 3 different times, with it triggering every 3 seconds and lasts for 30 seconds. So across this debuff's duration you can trigger it 10 times, equaling to another 5,250% of your Jinwoo's attacker's damage after you've stacked the burn debuff 3 different times. So yeah, this is definitely a must-have for when it comes to dealing lots and lots of fire damage. Another great DPS option from Dagger Toss is going to be Electric Shock, like I said before, which in my opinion is not as good as Detonation, but definitely still does hold its own. And this is because of its very high damage multiplier for a skill that only has a 10-second cooldown, plus it has very similar traits to Detonation, because it does also apply a damage over time effect. However, it is a little bit different, as instead of applying it as a debuff on the enemy, it deals damage equal to 700% of Jinwoo's attacker's damage through the Electric Shock effect and triggers every time time the skill does hit. When it came to me deciding the very best skill in solo leveling a rise for Jinwoo, I had two different options that I was debating putting first, but for the second best skill I decided on giving it to Armor Break for the second place spot. This is because all of first place's runes are amazing, whereas Armor Breaks aren't as good but still very usable because you have all 4 runes covering a different element, with Multi-Shadow Strike being a light element skill, Decimation is fire, Vacuum Wave is wind, and then finally Iceberg is of the water element, meaning the skill does actually have a huge amount of coverage for all kinds of bosses when you need lots of break damage, because each of its runes does also have almighty break damage, making it like Dagger Rush as one of your very best options. But which one of these 4 runes actually makes it the second best skill? Well, that would definitely have to be Vacuum Wave, as this version of Armor Break, in my opinion, is definitely the best rune in the entire game, but it is sadly let down by its others because what they offer just isn't as good in comparison due to Vacuum Wave excelling in pretty much literally everything, due to it being good against groups of enemies because it can pull them in together, it inflicts knockdown so it's one of the easiest ways for you to trigger the Collapse QTE skill, it increases vertical arts damage so it has good synergy with that, but above all else this can apply a 17% damage taken increased debuff to any enemies who are hit by the skill lasting for 12 seconds. So with all of that, I do think it definitely makes it one of the very best skills for literally anything where you need high amounts of damage, such as WOBL, POD, Guild Boss, and pretty much for any story or other boss content. Now before I talk about the very best skill in solo leveling a rise for Jinwoo, I want to list some honorable mentions because I know some people will ask questions like, what about this skill, what about that skill, is this one good or bad? I don't know. So to hopefully help you all out, some honorable mentions I want to name are going to be the likes of High Speed Rotation, Earth Shock, Liberation, Sunder, Effulgence, Cold Storm, and then of course all of Jinwoo's QTE skills, but I decided not to list them because they are used in everything. Alright then, for the number 1 skill for Sung Jinwoo in solo leveling a rise is of course going to be, to nobody's surprise, Sonic Stream. Yes, that's right, this is definitely the best all-round skill that Jinwoo can use due to it being the very best DPS skill that he does have. And just like Armor Break, all 4 of its runes do cover a different element, with Double Down being for light, Sonic Explosion for fire, Wind Shroud is wind, and finally Magnifying Slashes is of the dark element, allowing it to cover all kinds of content to be used in, where you need your Jinwoo to have lots of damage potential, like WOBL and tough instance dungeons or story bosses. But as well, unlike Armor Break, all 4 of these choices for runes are amazing, as starting with Double Down, it has the ability to increase the skill's damage by 280%. Sonic Explosion then heavily benefits Jinwoo's fire weapons of Phoenix Soul and the Fan of the Fire Demon, with it being able to activate and increase your core attack damage by 280% for 7 seconds. Then following that is Wind Shroud, which is a top tier skill for its 33% attack increase. But that does leave the last one, the best to last, being Magnifying Slashes, which for the longest time has had the reputation of being the best DPS rune in the entire game, and that hasn't really changed. So what makes this skill so powerful is the massive amount of damage bonuses it gives, because although it does have a low damage multiplier, it can actually be used 3 times in quick succession, and whenever it is used, you can increase the skill's damage by 275%, and it does stack twice by the way, giving it a total of a 550% damage increase to the skill, so I think to nobody's surprise, it's going to do a lot of damage. So what did you think to my top 5 skills for Sung Jinwoo in solo leveling a rise? Make sure to let me know in the comments, but of course don't forget to like and subscribe, and as always, I will see you all in the next video. Peace!